Venom #1 kicks off fresh start, and Eddie and the symbiote are up against something they've never seen before. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an I Review, a show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about is Venom #1, which is kicking off Marvel Fresh Start, and it's from Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, one of my favorite artists and one of the hottest writers inside Marvel right now. And this is going to be dealing with themes outside of what we normally expect from Venom. The symbiote itself is having nightmares, and it's causing some flashbacks to a previous existence or life. But let's dive in and see exactly what they've got in store for us. Venom #1 kicks off Marvel Fresh Start for everybody's favorite symbiote lethal protector, and we start off in an actual classical age. It looks like something well beyond where we are right now. There's a kind of Norse sense to it. They call for Beowulf. There's a lot of things going on, and what we see is what appears to be some sort of symbiote that is ravaging the countryside inside this nightmare. As this wide eye bolts awake, and we find that Eddie Brock is lying inside his dingy apartment or whatever he's squatting in at this point in time on a mattress that lies on the ground as lightning cracks across the sky, and the symbiote during the night has left Eddie. It didn't know that it could have nightmares, let alone did Eddie know that they could have nightmares. He's not necessarily sure, but the symbiote has been acting relatively different. He's been taking these kind of like antipsychotics so that way the kind of schism in the personality of the symbiote is a little bit more under control. And this has been happening since the Venom Inc. arc that happened in Amazing Spider-Man. And the symbiote itself is not super happy about having to take these antipsychotics, having to be put on some sort of medication. And as Eddie stands there in front of the mirror with a moment to think about himself and what's going on, he actually hears over the scanner there's a call that's coming in. Venom leaps out into the night. And what's great is that if you take a look at this art style, of course it's Ryan Stegman, and Ryan Stegman is doing a fantastic job. The rendering on this web is fantastic. The actual look of Venom is solid, and Donny Cates isn't necessarily talking to us, the reader. He's giving Eddie an internal dialogue, an internal monologue, so that way we understand the thought process of somebody that has lived with essentially a second personality that is completely unique and has its own memories for quite some time. And that's just how we're going to be carrying ourselves through the story. They're tracking down this new imposter jack-o'-lantern who appears to be selling some kind of weapons to various criminals inside the San Francisco area. And it's not Venom that's going to be busting them. It's going to be the actual cops. And Eddie, who's lost his job recently, is snapping photos trying to get back into the good graces of the places where he used to work. Of course, this doesn't necessarily go to plan. Jack-o'-lantern pulls a pistol from somewhere, starts shooting the cops, and that leaves the lethal protector to head in and take matters into its own hands. And what happens is that Venom doesn't listen to Eddie. Even though he was on the antipsychotics, we see that it's just kind of taking over itself. It's grabbing, it's mauling at this individual. He's taking his thumbs and pressing them into his eyes, blinding him. And as the cops start shooting into this Venom, it turns around and we see this kind of twisted, slightly runic, blood vein pulsing kind of imagery inside the alleyway, and it's just taking this central focus. I mean, you can see the use of depth of field, the way that the pistol's rendered, the way that the character's rendered. This is a distinct look for Venom. It's unlike anything that we've ever seen. The eyes are gone and are replaced with some sort of symbol, and it speaks in a language that no one can understand. And of course, as this new beast of a Venom starts to take down these officers, we see something embed itself into the forehead, and with a click, an explosion happens inside the alleyway, leaving Eddie Brock's Venom incapacitated. And knowing that this should have been Flash Thompson, oh well, it's not Flash Thompson, well, I guess Eddie's going to have to do. And the way that we open up the next scene is something that's relatively unique. You've got somebody that's tied down. You've got Eddie chained to this chair. He's sitting in front of a furnace that's raging, and you see this man in front of him flipping a cigarette lighter. And the one thing we know is the same thing that Eddie knows, and this man knows his way around a symbiote. And that's when the conversation starts to happen. They start talking about Project Rebirth, the program that gave birth to Captain America, the program that in version 2.0 gave birth to Flash Thompson's Agent Venom. And this is not the first time that Project Rebirth happened. Back in the day, they actually had bonded symbiote hosts, soldiers that would take symbiotes onto themselves and do dirty work for the US government. Eddie wasn't the first. Neither was Flash Thompson. This has been happening for a long time, which starts to explain the kind of flashback visions in the nightmare that we had earlier in the issue when he called out to Beowulf. This time beyond time that we didn't necessarily know about. And then there's a lot of exposition, a lot of explaining. As Rex Strickland is talking to Eddie Brock, going over these things, and Eddie is trying to kind of use the symbiote in order to surprise him, that's not really going to work out. But the big key is that Eddie doesn't know anything about his symbiote. He doesn't know what its name is. He doesn't know how many hosts he's had. He doesn't know how old it is. He has no kind of relationship with the symbiote, and that makes them weak. His goal, Rex Strickland's goal, is to recruit Eddie Brock to free the soldiers that went insane. These good men that had gone and bonded with the symbiote for far too long and that had gone insane with the kind of dichotomy, the duality of their natures, the two different mental states competing with each other. And he wants Eddie Brock's help in finding answers. And Eddie is more than willing to go participate so that way he can get answers himself. This leads him to a convoy, a military convoy deep underground, which is going to be carrying these men, a shield transport that is automated, and it's bringing them forward. As these guys that are monitoring these trucks move forward, they just call out to us just like, hey, there's another hobo on the tracks. What are we going to do? And the guy on dispatch is just like, do the world a favor, run him over. And that makes them bad men. And in Eddie and the symbiote's mind, bad men get what they deserve, leading to a phenomenal splash page from Ryan Stegman where Eddie just lays shoulder into this tractor-trailer truck and just collapses the entire front end, the men flying from inside of the truck outside. And it's one of those things where I love everything about Ryan Stegman's art. I love his rendering. I love how everything really looks. The one thing that I have noticed about this issue, and the one thing that you can't really do anything about because this is all taking place at night, is that the rendering for a lot of stuff, it feels like it's making Ryan Stegman's art a little bit muddy. It's a little bit less clear than it would normally be. But when you see the explosion on the truck, when you see the fire raging behind Eddie Brock, this is where Stegman's art really comes to life. And as he opens up the final part of the trailer, this fire raging out of control, you see the old men that he was trying to save from stasis, and they are in that same kind of runic, monstrous vision that they were beforehand, and they speak the same words. And the symbiote starts to leave Eddie Brock. It starts to run away. It feels compelled to leave him as he screams into the void, just waiting for what's coming next. And the only thing that's coming is pain as he's impaled through the chest by one of these beasts. They go back into the trailer, they reconcile, they collaborate, and what we see is the dead bodies being flung outside of it at Eddie Brock, leaving them in a heap. These old men that had bonded with the symbiotes now discarded like some sort of used up consumable. And as the final conversation happens, Eddie learns from the symbiote that he was compelled, he was forced to leave him. He didn't want to go, but he had to. The language that they were speaking is a dead one. It's a one that they haven't spoken in 1,000,000 years on Clintar. And what that said, what everybody said, was that God is coming as this combination of symbiotes busts out of the trailer, through the street, and up into the night amongst the cracks of lightning in the sky. And that's where we're going to end Venom #1, which is a really strong opening issue. So while it does feel a little bit similar to what Jerry Conway was doing with Carnage and bringing out Chthon and the whole Darkhold and situations like that, what this is going to do is it's going to be giving a pretty heavy retcon to Venom, and it's going to be creating a situation where he's got a history that extends back into the Marvel Universe well beyond where a lot of people expect. And I'm kind of excited for that. I think that we're in pretty good hands. I love the art. I think that I want a little bit more daytime kind of adventures just so I can see Ryan Stegman's art pop a little bit more. I think Donny Cates has got an interesting perspective on where things are going. So I want to see if this is going to be something a bit more original. I want to see if it's more than just like a kind of copy or a similar kind of path than what Jerry Conway took in the Carnage book. But I'm excited to see where this goes. It's got me enough for the first issue, and I'm pretty amped up about exactly what's going on. There's a lot of action in this, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. But I want to know what you guys think, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.